The prescription bottle trembles in David Thompson's weathered hands as the young pharmacy technician leans across the counter, his voice cutting through the quiet Tuesday afternoon like a blade. "Sir, I'm going to need you to step aside while I verify this prescription with your doctor's office. These numbers don't look right to me." The words hang in the air as other customers shift uncomfortably behind David, their curious stares burning into his back. But what happened next shocked everyone in that small-town Missouri pharmacy. Let me take you back to where this all began, just 20 minutes earlier. David pulls his burgundy Ford pickup into the familiar parking spot outside Miller's Pharmacy on Elm Street, the same spot he's used for the past 3 years since moving to Riverside. At 62, the retired Army sergeant carries himself with the quiet dignity that comes from 24 years of service, his graying hair still maintained in the precise style that once passed military inspection. The prescription in his shirt pocket is routine, the same pain medication he's picked up monthly since his injury in Afghanistan, the same medication that helps him sleep through the night without the phantom pain shooting through his left leg. The pharmacy smells of antiseptic and old linoleum, unchanged since David first walked through these doors, after his VA doctor recommended the local establishment for convenience. Mrs. Henderson from down the street waves from the blood pressure machine, and David nods politely, appreciating the small-town familiarity that drew him here after years of military bases and VA hospitals. Behind the counter, Aaron Smith barely looks up from his computer screen as David approaches. At 26, Aaron has worked at Miller's for 2 years, and his interactions with customers have grown increasingly terse as the months pass. The stress lines around his eyes seem deeper today, and there's something agitated in the way he handles the prescription bottles stacked beside his workstation. "Prescription for Thompson," David says, sliding the paper across the counter with the same calm efficiency he's maintained through countless similar exchanges. Aaron's fingers pause over his keyboard as he scans the prescription. His brow furrows, and he holds the paper closer to the light. "This is for oxycodone, 90 count." "Yes, same as always," David replies, sensing the shift in Aaron's demeanor but maintaining his patient tone. Little did David know that this routine pickup was about to become anything but routine. Aaron's eyes narrow as he studies the prescription more intently. The dosage seems high for someone your age, and this quantity. He trails off, his voice carrying an unmistakable note of suspicion that causes David's jaw to tighten, almost imperceptibly. "Is there a problem?" David asks, his voice still controlled, but with an edge that suggests years of dealing with bureaucratic obstacles. "Well," Aaron says, loud enough that Mrs. Henderson glances over from the blood pressure machine. "We've been having issues with fraudulent prescriptions lately. People coming in with fake scripts, trying to get pills to sell on the street. I need to verify this with your doctor's office." The words hit David like a physical blow, but his military training kicks in. "Stay calm. Assess the situation. Don't escalate. The prescription is legitimate. My doctor is Dr. Martinez at the VA clinic in Springfield. You have his number on file." Aaron shrugs, his posture becoming more confrontational. "That's what they all say. Look, I've seen this before. Veterans coming in, claiming they need all these pills for their service-related injuries." He actually uses air quotes, and David feels heat rising in his chest. Half the time, these prescriptions are either forged or the doctors are just pill mills. The other customers have stopped pretending not to listen. Mrs. Henderson's eyes widen, and a younger woman with 2 small children takes a step back as if David might suddenly become dangerous. This decision would change everything. "Son," David says, his voice dropping to the tone he once used to address subordinates who were about to make career-ending mistakes, "I suggest you call Dr. Martinez's office right now. This prescription is legitimate, and your accusations are not only wrong but completely inappropriate." But Aaron seems emboldened by the attention. "Sir, I'm just doing my job. The state requires us to be vigilant about prescription fraud, especially with opioids. Your story might work on other people, but I've been trained to spot the signs." He taps the prescription with his pen. This is all the hallmarks of a fake. The handwriting looks suspicious, the quantities are excessive, and honestly, You don't look like you're in enough pain to need this medication. The pharmacy falls completely silent except for the hum of the refrigeration units. David's hands clench into fists at his sides, then slowly relax as years of discipline override his anger. Mrs. Henderson whispers something to her companion, and the woman with children hurries her kids toward the greeting card section. But the real shock was still coming. "I am not faking anything," David says, his voice steady but carrying the weight of absolute authority. "I served this country for 24 years. I was wounded in Afghanistan defending the freedoms that allow you to stand behind that counter and make a living. This prescription is from a licensed VA physician treating documented service-related injuries, and I will not stand here and be accused of criminal behavior by someone who clearly doesn't understand what he's talking about." Aaron's face flushes, but instead of backing down, he doubles down. "Look, I don't care about your military service. That doesn't give you the right to abuse the system. I've seen plenty of veterans come through here with questionable prescriptions, and I'm not going to be the guy who enables drug dealing just because someone wore a uniform." The tension in the pharmacy is now palpable. David stares at Aaron for a long moment, his expression unreadable, before reaching across the counter and taking his prescription back. "Keep the prescription," Aaron calls out as David turns to leave. "But don't think you can just go to another pharmacy. I'm going to make some calls, let people know to watch out for you." David pauses at the door, his hand on the handle, and turns back one final time. His voice is quiet, but every person in the pharmacy hears every word. "Young man, you just made the biggest mistake of your career." As David walks out into the afternoon sunlight, his mind is already working, calculating, planning. Aaron Smith has no idea what storm he just unleashed, and the quiet determination in David's eyes suggests that this confrontation is far from over. David's hands trembled slightly as he inserted his key into the front door of his modest ranch-style home. The afternoon sun cast long shadows across his driveway, but nothing could warm the chill that Aaron's accusation had left in his chest. The pharmacy tech's words echoed in his mind. "These prescriptions look suspicious to me." He dropped his keys on the kitchen counter and stared at the empty prescription bottles, still clutched in his other hand. 23 years of military service, to tours in Afghanistan, and this is what he came home to? His phone buzzed. "Hey, Dave, it's Marcus. How'd the pharmacy run go?" David sank into his recliner, the same one where he'd spent countless nights battling insomnia since returning from his second deployment. "Not good, brother. Not good at all." "What happened?" "The tech there accused me of faking my prescriptions in front of everyone. Made me feel like some kind of drug dealer." The line went quiet for a moment. Marcus Rodriguez had served alongside David in Kandahar and knew the weight those words carried. "That's messed up, man. You've been going to that same pharmacy for 3 years. I know, but this new guy, Aaron something, he looked at me like I was scum. Said the prescriptions looked suspicious and made me wait while he called my doctor's office." David's eyes drifted to the wall of photographs above his fireplace. There he was in desert camouflage, standing with his unit outside forward operating base Lightning. The young faces stared back at him, some who never made it home. He'd earned every medication he took through sacrifice most people couldn't imagine. What are you going to do? But David's mind was already wandering to that day in Kandahar when the IED went off. The ringing in his ears lasted for weeks. The shrapnel in his back still sent shooting pains down his leg during cold snaps. The nightmares that required the very medications Aaron had questioned. Meanwhile, across town, Aaron Smith sat in the break room of Westfield Pharmacy, nursing his third cup of coffee and staring at a stack of prescription forms. His supervisor, Jana Morrison, had pulled him aside earlier with troubling news. "Aaron, we've had issues before with fraudulent prescriptions," she'd said, lowering her voice. "Last year, we caught 3 separate cases of people trying to pass off fake oxycodone prescriptions. The state board came down hard on us." Aaron rubbed his temples. His student loans were crushing him, and this job was supposed to be temporary until he finished his pharmacy degree. But the pressure to catch fraud had made him paranoid about every prescription that crossed his desk. He thought about the veteran from earlier. Something about those prescriptions had triggered his suspicion. though he couldn't put his finger on exactly what. The handwriting looked slightly different from the usual doctor's scrawl, and the quantities seemed high. But now, sitting here, doubt crept in. What if he'd been wrong? Back at his house, David was scrolling through his contacts when he stopped at State Board of Pharmacy. Marcus had suggested filing a complaint, and the more David thought about it, the more it made sense. You can't let this slide, Marcus had said. What if he does this to another veteran? Someone who doesn't have the backbone to fight back. David knew Marcus was right. During their service, they'd seen too many soldiers come home broken, only to face a system that treated them with suspicion instead of respect. Some turned to alcohol, others isolated themselves completely. A few didn't make it at all. His finger hovered over the call button. Filing a complaint could ruin Aaron's career, but hadn't Aaron tried to ruin his reputation first? The late afternoon light was fading as Aaron's shift ended. He climbed into his beat-up Honda Civic and sat in the parking lot, watching other employees head home to their families. His apartment waited for him, empty except for textbooks and bills he couldn't afford to pay. His phone rang. "Aaron, it's Mom. How was work today?" "Fine," he lied, not wanting to worry her. She was already working 2 jobs to help him through school. Any interesting customers? Aaron thought about the veteran. The man had remained calm throughout the entire ordeal, never raising his voice or becoming aggressive like some customers did when questioned. There had been something dignified about him, something that reminded Aaron of his own grandfather who'd served in Vietnam. "Just the usual," he said. But as he drove home through the quiet streets of Westfield, Aaron couldn't shake the feeling that today had been anything but usual. Something in the veteran's eyes had looked familiar, the same haunted expression he'd seen in his grandfather's photographs from the war. David was pacing in his living room when his phone rang. The caller ID showed a number he didn't recognize. "Mr. Thompson, this is Sarah Chen from the Indiana State Board of Pharmacy. We've received your complaint regarding an incident at Westfield Pharmacy." David's heart rate quickened. "Yes, ma'am. We take these matters very seriously. I'll need to schedule a time to meet with you in person to discuss the details of your experience." As David agreed to the meeting, he noticed his neighbor's porch light flickering on across the street. Mrs. Henderson was watering her flowers, the same routine she'd maintained for the 15 years he'd lived here. Everything looked normal, peaceful even. But David knew that by tomorrow, nothing would ever be the same. The investigation was about to begin, and neither he nor Aaron had any idea what secrets it would uncover about the pharmacy. They both thought they knew. The phone rings at David Thompson's kitchen table, cutting through the morning quiet like a blade. He glances at the caller ID and takes a deep breath before answering. "Mr. Thompson, this is Patricia Martinez from the Michigan State Board of Pharmacy. We've received your formal complaint regarding Aaron Smith and the incident at Medcare Pharmacy." David feels his pulse quicken. 3 days have passed since he filed the report, and part of him hoped it might just disappear into bureaucratic limbo. "Yes, ma'am. I wasn't sure if anyone would actually follow up. Oh, we take these matters very seriously, especially when they involve potential discrimination against veterans. We'll be conducting a full investigation. An inspector will be visiting the pharmacy within the next week, and we'll need to schedule a formal interview with you." The weight of his decision suddenly feels heavier. This isn't just about him anymore. Aaron's entire career could be at stake. Later that morning, Aaron Smith sits in the cramped back office of Medcare Pharmacy, staring at his manager's concerned face. The fluorescent light flickers overhead, casting harsh shadows across the cluttered desk. "Aaron, I need to ask you about something serious," his manager, Jana, says quietly. "The state board called. There's been a complaint filed against you by a customer, a veteran named David Thompson." Aaron's stomach drops. The coffee mug in his hands suddenly feels impossibly heavy. "A complaint? About what?" "They're saying you accused him of prescription fraud without proper cause, that you embarrassed him in front of other customers." Jeanette's voice carries disappointment that cuts deeper than anger. "Aaron, you know we have protocols for handling suspicious prescriptions. This isn't how we do things." The room feels like it's closing in. Aaron has worked at this pharmacy for years, building his reputation, supporting his elderly mother's medical bills. "Jana, I was just being careful. We've had so many fake prescriptions lately, and his paperwork looked. The state board doesn't care what it looked like to you. They care about proper procedure. And now they're launching a full investigation. She slides a formal letter across the desk. You could lose your certification over this. But what really haunts Aaron isn't just the threat to his career. It's the memory of the respect he saw drain from David Thompson's eyes that day. Meanwhile, David finds himself facing unexpected resistance from his own community. At the American Legion post that evening, veteran Tom Rodriguez confronts him near the bar. "Come on, Dave, was it really worth it? Making that big of a fuss over one pharmacy tech having a bad day?" David sets down his beer, feeling the familiar weight of having to defend his choices. "It wasn't just a bad day, Tom. The guy humiliated me in front of a crowd, made me feel like some kind of criminal just for picking up my medication. But filing a complaint with the state board? That could destroy the kid's life. Maybe he was just doing his job, being extra careful." The conversation draws attention from other veterans in the post. David feels the division rippling through his community, some supporting his right to dignity, others questioning whether he's overreacting. The unity he's always found here feels fractured. Since when did asking for basic respect become overreacting? David's voice carries an edge now. "I served this country for 8 years. I shouldn't have to prove my legitimacy every time I need medical care." That same night, Aaron sits alone in his one-bedroom apartment, a half-empty bottle of beer warming in his hands. The state board letter lies on his coffee table like an accusation. His phone buzzes with texts from co-workers who've heard about the investigation. The shame burns in his chest. He thinks about calling his mother, but what would he tell her? That he might lose the job that pays for her diabetes medication because he couldn't keep his mouth shut? That his suspicious nature, the same trait that's caught legitimate prescription fraud in the past, might have targeted an innocent veteran. The irony isn't lost on him. He became a pharmacy tech partly because his own father struggled with prescription drug addiction. He thought he was protecting people. Instead, he may have become exactly the kind of obstacle that prevents legitimate patients from getting the help they need. His landline rings, jolting him from his spiral of self-doubt. The caller ID shows a number he doesn't recognize, but something compels him to answer. "Aaron, this is David Thompson. We need to talk." The state board investigator's office feels sterile and intimidating as David sits across from Sarah Chen, a woman whose sharp eyes seem to cut through any pretense. She slides a manila folder across the polished conference table, her expression unreadable. "Mr. Thompson, I need to be completely transparent with you," she begins, her voice carrying the weight of uncomfortable truth. "Your complaint has opened a much larger investigation than we initially anticipated." David's pulse quickens as he opens the folder. Inside are photocopied documents, pharmacy logs, and what appears to be a pattern of discrepancies dating back months. But before he can process the full implications, Sarah continues, "We've discovered that your pharmacy tech, Aaron Smith, has been flagging multiple prescriptions as suspicious. The concerning part is that 60% of those flagged were for veterans." The revelation hits David like a physical blow. His hands tremble slightly as he flips through page after page of evidence. "You're telling me this wasn't just about me?" "I'm afraid not. But here's where it gets complicated. Some of those prescriptions he flagged were actually fraudulent." Meanwhile, across town, Aaron paces his cramped apartment, cell phone pressed to his ear. His childhood friend Marcus sits on the worn couch, watching with growing concern. "I know you think I've lost it," Aaron says into the phone, presumably to his supervisor. "But I'm telling you, something bigger is happening here." After hanging up, Marcus leans forward. "Man, you've been carrying this weight for months. What aren't you telling me?" Aaron stops pacing and pulls out a small notebook from his kitchen drawer. His hands shake as he opens it, revealing pages of handwritten notes, dates, and prescription numbers. "3 months ago, I noticed patterns," he whispers. "Certain doctors writing identical scripts, patients I'd never seen before coming in with high-dollar medications. When I started digging deeper, I realized the pharmacy was being used as a front for prescription fraud." Marcus's eyes widen. "Why didn't you report this to your boss?" "Because my boss was involved." The weight of this confession hangs in the air like smoke. Aaron collapses into his chair, the burden of months of suspicion and fear finally spilling out. That veteran, David Thompson, he was clean. His prescription was legitimate. But by the time I realized it, I'd already accused him publicly. I was so paranoid about missing the real fraud that I started seeing it everywhere. Back at the state board office, Sarah Chen drops another bombshell on David. "Mr. Thompson, we need your help. Aaron Smith has been trying to contact us for weeks about larger fraud occurring at your pharmacy. Your complaint gave us the opening we needed to investigate." David feels the room spinning. "Wait, are you saying he was trying to protect the pharmacy? In a misguided way?" "Yes. He suspected his supervisor and several regular customers of running a prescription fraud ring. Your legitimate prescription got caught in his overzealous investigation." The community center buzzes with tension that evening as locals gather for what was supposed to be a routine town hall meeting. Word has spread about the pharmacy incident, and sides have been drawn. Veteran supporters sit on one side, longtime pharmacy customers on the other. "This is about respect," shouts veteran Tom Martinez, his voice carrying across the crowded room. "They're treating our brothers like criminals." An elderly woman stands up, her voice shaking with emotion. "That pharmacy has served this community for 40 years. One complaint shouldn't destroy their reputation." The moderator struggles to maintain order as voices rise and accusations fly. In the back of the room, David watches the community he loves tearing itself apart over his actions. But then, through the chaos, he spots Aaron standing by the exit door, looking pale and conflicted. Their eyes meet across the room, and something passes between them. A recognition that they're both victims of a larger deception. David pushes through the crowd, following Aaron outside into the cool evening air. The parking lot provides a stark contrast to the heated atmosphere inside. "We need to talk," David says simply. Aaron nods, his usual defensiveness replaced by exhaustion. "There's something you need to know about why I really questioned your prescription that day." The two men stand under a flickering streetlight, the weight of misunderstanding hanging between them like a bridge waiting to be crossed or burned. "I've been investigating prescription fraud at the pharmacy for months," Aaron begins, his voice barely above a whisper. "But the person I suspected of being involved wasn't a customer, it was my boss." The state board investigator's words still echo in David's mind as he sits across from Aaron. In the small conference room at the pharmacy, the fluorescent lights hum overhead, casting harsh shadows on both their faces. Aaron's hands tremble slightly as he opens a manila folder, his earlier defiance completely gone. "I need to show you something, David," Aaron says, his voice barely above a whisper. "Something I should have explained from the beginning." He slides a stack of photographs across the table, images of prescription pads, forged signatures, altered dosages. David's eyes widen as he recognizes several names, fellow veterans, from his support group. 3 months ago, I started noticing patterns," Aaron continues, his voice gaining strength. "Veterans coming in with prescriptions that looked off. Not yours, never yours, but others. The handwriting didn't match, the dosages were wrong for the conditions listed. I tried to tell my manager, but she brushed me off, said I was being paranoid." David picks up one of the photographs, studying the obvious forgery. "Why didn't you just report this to the authorities yourself?" Aaron's face crumples with shame. "Because I thought it was connected to your group somehow. I thought maybe someone was using the veteran community as a cover for prescription fraud. When you came in that day, I was already on edge, already suspicious of everyone. I let my paranoia cloud my judgment." The state board investigator, Mrs. Rodriguez, leans forward. "Mr. Smith's documentation has been invaluable to our investigation. We've identified a ring of fraudsters who were specifically targeting veterans' identities to obtain controlled substances. They were stealing personal information from VA records and creating fake prescriptions." David feels the weight of understanding settle over him. "You were trying to protect us." "I was," Aaron nods, tears forming in his eyes. "But I went about it all wrong. I made assumptions. I treated you like a criminal instead of a victim of identity theft. I let my stress and fear turn me into exactly the kind of person I hate, someone who judges without understanding." The room falls silent except for the distant sounds of the pharmacy operating beyond the closed door. David studies Aaron's face, seeing not the confrontational tech who humiliated him, but a man who was drowning in responsibility and fear. The real criminals have been arrested, Mrs. Rodriguez continues. Thanks to Mr. Smith's meticulous documentation and Mr. Thompson's complaint, we were able to trace the forgeries back to a sophisticated operation. They've been stealing veteran information and selling fake prescriptions for months. David stands up slowly, walking to the window that overlooks Main Street. His reflection stares back at him, and for the first time in weeks, he doesn't see just an accused man. He sees someone who stood up for himself and, inadvertently, for his entire community. Aaron, he says, turning back to face the younger man, I want to make something clear. What you did wrong wasn't your suspicion, it was how you handled it. You embarrassed me in public, made assumptions about my character without cause. But your instincts about the fraud, they were right. Aaron wipes his eyes with the back of his hand. I know I can't undo the humiliation I caused you, but I want to do better. I've been thinking about this for weeks, and I have an idea. Over the next hour, Aaron outlines his proposal. He wants to create a verification system, specifically designed to protect veterans from prescription fraud, while ensuring they're treated with dignity and respect. He's researched best practices, contacted other pharmacies, even reached out to the VA about implementing a secure verification protocol. I want you to be part of this, Aaron tells David. Your experience, your perspective, it's exactly what we need to make sure this never happens to another veteran. David considers the proposal, feeling something shift inside his chest. The anger and humiliation that have consumed him for weeks began to transform into something else. Purpose. 2 months later, David stands at a podium in the community center, addressing a packed room of veterans, pharmacists, and healthcare advocates. Aaron sits in the front row, nervous but determined. Mrs. Rodriguez from the state board is there too, along with representatives from 3 neighboring counties who want to implement their new verification system. What started as one of the worst experiences of my life has become one of the most meaningful, David says to the crowd, not because of what happened to me, but because of what we chose to do about it. The program they've developed together, Veterans Prescription Protection Protocol, has already been adopted by 12 pharmacies across the state. It creates a secure verification system that protects veterans from fraud, while ensuring they're treated with the respect they've earned through their service. After the presentation, Aaron approaches David near the refreshment table. I never properly apologized, he says, not just for the accusation, but for how I made you feel. You deserved better from me, from the system, from everyone. David extends his hand, and Aaron takes it gratefully. We both learned something important, David replies. Sometimes the worst misunderstandings can lead to the best solutions, but only if we're willing to listen to each other. As the evening winds down and people begin to leave, David sees Aaron talking animatedly with a group of young pharmacy students about the importance of treating every patient with dignity. The transformation is complete, not just in Aaron, but in David himself. He's gone from feeling victimized to becoming an advocate, from being silenced to finding his voice. Walking to his car under the streetlights, David reflects on how a single moment of humiliation sparked a movement that's now protecting veterans across the state. Sometimes the most painful experiences become the most powerful catalysts for positive change. This story isn't just about one veteran and one pharmacy tech. It's about the power of turning conflict into collaboration, suspicion into understanding, and personal pain into community protection. Because when we choose to build bridges instead of walls, everyone wins.